I recorded this video like last August. Man, like time flies. It's maybe because I'm getting older or because I cram so much stuff into my schedule, and there's so many more responsibilities in my life that trying to get to stuff, especially personal projects, has been quite the task. I can't say that I regret it, but at the same time, it's like I don't like the feeling of letting time just pass me by, and I feel like I'm not doing enough with my own uh, projects, which of course we all have that dream and goal of working on our own projects. That being said, we work so hard as artists, hopefully to one day work on our own projects, to write our own stories, draw our own books, make our own films, and if it's not like number one, two, or three priority in our lives, a lot of time it gets away from us, and I talk about that quite often. So, like I've mentioned before, Neo Wonderland, which used to be called Shangri-La, and it's a copyright thing, so I had to change the name. I've had that story in my mind off and on for 20 years, and after I finished Lola, I knew that I wanted to work on it, and I was really ready to go. Maybe even 2 years ago when I started to post new drawings of it, and I still have fond memories of working on it, and there's still scenes that I have to have in this new iteration of the story. So, I had a look in mind years ago, and it's pretty close to what it is now, except I wasn't well versed in inking per se. Like, I wasn't used to spotting all the blacks and then the contrast and then using brush. Everything was like, if I was using anything, it was like pens or Photoshop to ink. But I really just wanted that hand done look, manga basically. But there's the dichotomy, because I love black and white art, as you know, and I love coloring my work. So there had to be like a middle ground with how to approach it. And I thought, the whole color thing will probably work out in the end because there's so many different ways to go about it. But the thing that I needed to figure out was like, how am I going to ink this thing, or how, if I do color it by hand, what am I going to ink it with, and is it going to be, or not ink, what am I going to color it with? If it's going to be traditional, whether it be marker, or now I'm working with a lot of India ink, I would still have to ink it a certain way to be able to overlay all the traditional stuff on top of it. So I started playing around with the India inks with the intent of hopefully coloring it or inking it, because I know it was waterproof. So there's that you have to figure out, if the ink you're using is waterproof or marker proof, because it's alcohol markers. So that was the challenge. And I, off and on, I would practice with watercolors, all sorts of inks, as for years. And I didn't like how it looked when I started. It wasn't until, I really just had to get away from using markers. It was expensive. It was hard to travel with, maybe running out of the colors you want. So I switched over to the India inks like I'm using now, but I just didn't like the way it looked. So I had to experiment, and I had all this time in between projects for myself and for other people and companies, and it wasn't until I started really focusing on it and just getting down and dirty and experimenting with it that I realized like it was well worth the effort to put into it. So but most importantly, it was getting the black and white or the line art done a certain way, and then doing it consistently. That was important to me. So that's when I started to make more pieces like this, like the splash piece that I'm working on right now. Make it so that it's kind of what I had in mind for how it was going to look, and it wouldn't have mattered if I colored with Photoshop, with markers, or with inks or watercolors. The bottom line was I needed a base to start with, so that I could speed and fast track this process of doing my own story, because the last thing I want to do is focus solely on things that got me into a lot of trouble before with deadlines. on this project. So I think I've figured it out that I'm going to do, traditional inking with the brush and the nibs and everything, but with the permanent manga ink. And then the covers would be done with colored India ink and, so it would be traditional, whereas the interior would be traditional inking and penciling and then digital colors. Because it's a cyberpunk book, I feel like I could get away with that. Whereas when I was doing Lola, it was everything was more manual, and analog. So I could get away with coloring it either way, but it just felt like it fit more with Lola than it would with Neo Wonderland, where I wanted to do a lot of neon and bright lights and stuff. So inking it this way and coloring it this way was going to be more beneficial to the story overall. Okay, so this is going to be a trip. Mainly because it's embarrassing. So I was at my dad's house and I found a whole portfolio's worth, actually like 5 portfolios worth of really old Shangri-La Neo Wonderland art. And it's really bad. It's really bad, and I didn't realize how bad it was until I saw it again. And, we have to grow, right? So this has got to be like, here, I'll give you a point of reference. This is how old this is. I was at the first Emerald City Comic Con ever, when it was right next to the stadium, the Mariners Stadium at the time, Safeco Field, and it was at the convention center there. And it's also as old as the first SakuraCon, or first 2 years. It's got to be the first year or so of SakuraCon, when it was in SeaTac across from the airport in the hotel. That's how old these pages are. I mean, now everybody knows Emerald City Comic Con and SakuraCon, but yeah, this is old. So this is how it looked like back then. Oh boy. I mean, I tried. This is after I've drawn these pages at least a dozen times. Yeah, I thought these are bad. But like I said, you got to grow and you have to be able to look at your old stuff and be okay with it. That's, I'm going to say, give or take about 20 years ago. Okay, maybe, yeah, it's got to be between 18 to 20 years ago. That's a long time. Yeah, it's, after a few years, I got tired of looking at my old stuff. So, I put it away, and it was in storage, and now you see that it's back in my life. Thanks for stopping by my channel. I hope to see you guys around again. And as always, keep drawing. And thank you. I know I'm being redundant. I say that all the time. All right. Well, time to get back to work.